Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 148 based on novel. So let's start. The sudden drastic change in Xiao Yang's expression also attracted the notice of Little Fairy Doctor's group. Everyone were startled as they carefully asked, "What is it?" Xiao Yang inhaled a deep breath of cold air. He looked at old ghost Zhai Xing and the others who are increasingly close to the stone chair. A bad feeling suddenly rose within his heart. An instant later, he suddenly grabbed Zi Yang and Qing Lin beside him and cried out in a deep voice, "Pull back quickly." This unusual action of Xiao Yang caused Little Fairy Doctor and the rest to be at a loss. However, everyone trusted Xiao Yang's words. Hence, they might be uncertain of the reason for this action of his, but they still immediately turned around and hurriedly followed him. While Xiao Yang's group was hurrying back, old ghost Zhai Xing's group had also stepped into a 10-feet radius of the stone chair. Both of his eyes were fiery hot as he watched the seated skeleton. Do Sheng. This level possessed an allure that even they could not resist. An elite Do Sheng might be able to be called the top expert of this continent, but there was still too much of a gap to the true peak. Do Zun and Do Sheng was basically a great leap apart. The gap between the two was basically impossible to be make up by anything. Is this the bones of an elite Do Sheng? Old ghost Zhai Xing's eyes were wild and hot as they stared at the jade-white skeleton. He involuntarily leaked his tongue. His feet took another 2 steps forward and his large hand directly grabbed towards the skeleton. Kai. When the hands of old ghost Zhai Xing were about to touch the skeleton, a slight wiggling had suddenly appeared in that space. Immediately, they appeared to have transformed into countless number of extremely sharp spatial thorns that ruthlessly pierced onto old ghost Zhai Xing's hand. The slight pain that was emitted from his hand caused old ghost Zhai Xing to be startled. He hurriedly withdrew his hand, only to discover that quite a lot of fresh blood had already flowed out from his hand. There were a couple of droplets amongst them that had gently dripped on the skeleton that was sitting down. An uneasy emotion quietly spread out from the heart of old ghost Zhai Xing as he looked at the fresh blood that landed on the jade-white skeleton. Zhai Xing Tianzuan, what is it? The couple of Hall of Soul experts, who had surrounded him, asked uncertainly. They were also startled when they saw old ghost Zhai Xing suddenly becoming stunned. Old ghost Zhai Xing appeared as though he did not hear their scream. His eyes firmly stared at the blood that dripped onto the skeleton. At this moment, these blood appeared like water that had touched cotton when they rolled onto the bones. It ended up quietly seeping into the bones. The eyes of old ghost Zhai Xing suddenly shrunk when the blood completely seeped into the bones. At this moment, he suddenly sensed that some life had actually once again surged within this skeleton that had been dead for an unknown number of years. This is bad. Withdraw quickly. Old ghost Zhai Xing finally reacted to the situation. The moment he sensed that life force, an anxious roar was emitted from within his mouth. At the same time, his feet stomped onto the ground and his body flew backwards in a lightning-like manner. Old ghost Zhai Xing's reaction was quick, but the other few experts from the Hall of Soul were a little slower. Hence, they only began to use their agility and pull back after being stunned for a moment. However, it was already too late at this moment. When they had just pulled back, the jade-white skeleton that was seated on the stone chair had already shook gently. After which, 2 clusters of faint blood-red color suddenly flashed and appeared within the empty skull. This Do Sheng skeleton slowly raised its head when the blood glow appeared. An earth-shaking roar was suddenly emitted from his mouth at this moment in a thunder-like manner. The frightening roar had transformed into a substance like sonic wave in an instant. It became like a storm as it spread apart in a lightning-like manner, with the stone chair being at the center. Bang! The first that was implicated by the sonic storm was naturally the few experts from the Hall of Soul, who were a little slow to react. The sonic wave caught up with them in an instant. Immediately, their bodies appeared to be like sandbags that had been struck by a cannonball. They immediately burst apart and turned into a bloody fog that spread apart with a bang. That old ghost Zhai Xing had also yet to escape from the attacking range of the sonic wave. However, he was strong and he had reacted sufficiently quickly. Hence, he did not instantly burst into a bloody fog like the other unlucky fellows. However, that sonic wave that swept over still caused some blood to churn within his body. A low and deep muffled sound appeared in his throat. Clearly, he had also suffered some injuries. Even with the strength of old ghost Zhai Xing, he was unable to endure a sonic wave roar from this Do Sheng skeleton. Hence, this sonic wave could be truly considered the scythe of a death god for most people belonging to the Hall of Soul. Quite a number of experts within the large hall were currently still chasing the 3 remaining scrolls. The sharp sonic wave spread with a lightning speed. The many figures in the mid-air suddenly stiffened. Immediately, a bang sounded and they blasted apart like a blood fog. In an instant, the entire large hall had been filled with a rich blood fog. This sudden bloody scene had also caused everyone to wake up from the allure of the Tian class Do skill. Some shock swiftly surged up their faces. Dochi surged out from their bodies without being held back as the many figures withdrew a great distance from the center of the large hall in a miserable manner, appearing like dogs, which had lost their homes. The sonic wave spread. After causing this slaughter that caused one's heart to feel a chill, everyone finally scattered with some ugly expression. They looked at the slowly scattering blood fog in the midair. A rich shock and chillness appeared within their hearts. At least 100 people had died under that sonic wave earlier. Amongst these people were 2 elite Dozuns, a sonic wave that can kill even elite Dozuns. Everyone who had escaped a calamity violently swallowed a mouthful of saliva at this moment. Even an expert like that black-robed old man from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe also had a face covered with cold sweat at this moment. Old Ghost Jiaxing, what have you done? Tang Zhan, who had recovered from this unexpected change, suddenly turned their furious eyes towards Old Ghost Jiaxing, who had escaped. His voice was furious as they spoke. Everyone turned their furious eyes towards Old Ghost Jiaxing when they heard Tang Zhan's furious voice. All of them had clearly saw that this manner was caused by this old ghost. Upon being stared at furiously by so many experts, even Old Ghost Jiaxing ended up twitching the corner of his mouth. His mouth was filled with bitterness. He had also never expected that things would suddenly become like this. A skeleton that had clearly lost all of its strength was actually be able to suddenly unleash such a frightening strength. Xiao Yang's group did not suffer much injuries because they were quick to pull back. However, the skin on their heads were involuntarily numb when they saw that there were less than half of the number of people left within the large hall at this moment. Was that skeleton not a little too frightening? The old me is unaware of why that skeleton that had been dead for countless number of years will suddenly erupt. A couple of experts from our Hall of Soul are also dead. Old Ghost Jiaxing inhaled a deep breath of air and spoke in a deep voice with the intent of washing off his responsibility. There were many experts present. It was impossible for him to offend all of them with his strength alone. If it was not because your fresh blood had landed on the skeleton, how would it have awakened? Are you trying to shrink from your responsibility after things had become like this? Xiao Yang laughed coldly when he heard the explanation. The expression of Old Ghost Jiaxing changed when he heard these words from Xiao Yang. However, upon sensing an increasing number of furious gazes from around him, he could only cup his hands together and said, "This matter is indeed because of the recklessness of the old me. However, the most important thing now is not to hold others accountable. If the old me guessed correctly, that Do Sheng skeleton should be a thought left behind by that expert when he was alive. It is not difficult to deal with. As long as we join hands, we will definitely be able to suppress it. Just a thought alone is already so frightening. If another of that sonic wave earlier arrives, it was likely that not many people in this place can survive." Tang Zhan's expression was as deep as water. Quite a number of experts from the Burning Flame Valley had been killed by the sonic wave. If it was not because now was not the right moment, he would have been unable to control himself and attack Old Ghost Jiaxing. Since we have already obtained the scroll, all of us should just leave. This things is too frightening, someone within the crowd softly said. His voice contained a horror that could not be hidden. That kind of strength was really too frightening. It is not possible to leave. This thought will definitely finish off everyone who has barged into the remains. Should we flee, it is likely that no one will be able to leave alive. Old Ghost Jiaxing spoke in a deep voice. Xiao Yang narrowed his eyes slightly. He felt that this old ghost seemed to really desire to finish off this Dosheng skeleton. However, given Old Ghost Jiaxing's cautious character, he would definitely not risk his life like this for no reason. Old Ghost Jiaxing's words had also stirred some chaos. Some of the weaker individuals had an even richer horror on their faces. However, no one dared to turn around and flee. Creak. During the time when even was in a chaos, the interior of the large hall that was permeated by a blood fog suddenly emitted a slight sound of bone moving. This sound immediately silenced all the commotion. Numerous horrified eyes were staring at the middle of the large hall permeated by a blood fog. Horror spread in an increasingly serious manner at this moment. The sound of bone touching the ground became closer. That sound was not loud, but it appeared to be stepping on everyone's heart, causing everyone to feel extremely pressured. "Be careful, do not separate." Xiao Yang's expression was grave. He turned his head and softly spoke to Little Fairy Doctor's group. This situation seemed to have already exceeded their control. It would really be too frightening for the skeleton of a Do Sheng to be revived. Little Fairy Doctor and the rest also nodded. If things were not done properly this time around, it was likely that everyone here would end up dying. It was likely that hardly anyone present could forcefully resist the kind of sonic wave attack from earlier. The blood fog within the large hall slowly rippled under the gaze of everyone. Immediately a blood-red skeleton that had been dyed red took slow steps out of the blood fog and appeared in front of everyone's gazes. "Those who barge into the remains shall die." The blood-colored skeleton halted its footsteps 100 meters in front of everyone. It raised its head. Blood light flickered within those empty eyes. An ancient hoarse indifferent voice quietly resounded within the large hall. The skeleton thin body stood within the large hall. Its originally jade-white body had already turned scarlet. At a glance, it gave one a kind of extremely strong bloody feeling. 2 clusters of faint red glow flickered slightly within the skeleton's eyes. 2 scrolls were dancing in the mid-air above the head of the Dosheng skeleton. Some unknown lucky fellow had obtained 1 scroll during the chaos earlier. Hence, there were currently these 2 scrolls remaining that were without an owner. Of course, at this moment, there were hardly anyone who dared to snatch the meat from a tiger's mouth in the face of the deterrence by the Dosheng skeleton. The expressions of everyone in the hall once again changed slightly when that hoarse and old voice slowly sounded. From the looks of it, they would not be able to smoothly leave if they did not defeat this Dosheng skeleton. Everyone, there is no need to panic. The interior of this Dosheng skeleton only possess a remnant spiritual imprint left by that expert when he was alive. It is not a genuine Dosheng. It is not impossible to defeat it. However, the precondition is that we must join hands. Otherwise, if it defeats us individually, there is a chance that all of us will perish. Old Ghost Zhaixing spoke in a deep voice. Old Mr. Zhaixing is right. However, since this skeleton was awakened by you, please be the first to attack. Xiao Yang smiled slightly and said, yes, this should indeed be the case. You must take a large part of the responsibility for this manner. If you wish for all of us to join hands in dealing with it, you must be the first to fight. Tang Zhen also nodded and agreed. Some other experts mused for a moment before nodding in agreement. They were already quite displeased with old Ghost Zhaixing's reckless action. Being able to take this small revenge could relieve their anger. The shriveled face of old Ghost Zhaixing involuntarily twitched upon seeing this. His eyes were vicious as they stared at Xiao Yang. This soft blade of the latter had directly pushed him to the most dangerous place. Moreover, from the looks of it, he was unable to pull back. All he could do was to harden his skin and step forward. Everyone is being reasonable. In that case, the old me shall be the first to attack. However, I will remind everyone that the fewer experts there are present, the more dangerous our situation will be. Regardless of whether we have any grudge in the past, we are all currently on the same boat. No one will have any good ending if this boat capsizes. Old Ghost Zhaixing could only harden his skin in the face of the many gazes and spoke in a righteous manner. Old Mr. Zhaixing, please be reassured that we will not just watch you die in the hands of this Dosheng skeleton. Xiao Yang smilingly said. Those words that he had uttered, however, caused a green color to appear on old Ghost Zhaixing's face. All right, let's not talk any nonsense. You should be quick if you wish to attack. This Dosheng skeleton seemed to be absorbing the strength within the blood fog to replenish itself. That black-robed elder from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe suddenly had a sunken expression as he coldly cried out. Everyone were startled when they heard these words of his. Their gazes looked over and did indeed see that the blood-red color on the body of the Dosheng skeleton becoming increasingly dark. The surrounding black fog was also swiftly flowing into his body. Old Mr. Zhaixing, it is time to attack. Xiao Yang cried out in a deep voice. The corner of old Ghost Zhaixing's eyes twitched. He endured the impulse he had to kill Xiao Yang with a slap as he clenched his teeth and said, the old me knows this. There is no need for you to say anything more. Old Ghost Zhaixing understood that there was no time for him to continue delaying after his voice sounded. His body moved and it transformed into a blurry black figure that rushed towards the blood skeleton that was at the middle of the hall. Vast and mighty Do Qi surged out from the body of old Ghost Zhaixing like a volcano in all directions. This aura caused the blood fog that permeated within the large hall to become a little thinner. The morale of quite a number of people were braced when they saw this mighty aura of old Ghost Zhaixing. Creak. The blood glint within the eyes of the skeleton looked towards the black figure that rushed over while being accompanied by vast and mighty Do Qi. It moved its jaws up and down a little before taking a step forward. A dark red skeleton hand directly grabbed towards old Ghost Zhaixing. The speed of the skeleton was extremely frightening. He had just lifted his hand when the space in front of him was directly torn apart. His hand penetrated through the shattered space. It had already appeared in front of old Ghost Zhaixing when it next appeared. The frightening speed of this blood-colored skeleton also caused the heart of old Ghost Zhaixing to sink. His hand was tightened into a fist and the Do Qi within his body gathered on his right arm before it was suddenly thrown outward. Bang! A fist violently smashed on the palm of the skeleton. However, the seemingly weak skeleton was currently even harder than steel. This punch of old Ghost Zhaixing, which contained all of his strength, merely forced back this Dosheng skeleton by a step. On the other hand, he was forced back by over a dozen steps, appearing a little miserable. However, this old Ghost Zhaixing was also a vicious character. His mission this time around was to bring this Dosheng skeleton back. Therefore, he did not dare to be lazy. After stabilizing his body, he moved once again. His body shot outwards and once again became entangled with the Dosheng skeleton. A big battle erupted. Xiao Yang and the rest watched the big battle. They were involuntarily a little speechless. This Do Sheng skeleton was indeed very powerful. Even an expert like old ghost Zhai Xing was being suppressed until he continued to be defeated despite using his full strength. This is merely just a remnant spiritual imprint. Just how frightening will it be if it is a completely elite Do Sheng? This thought flashed across the hearts of quite a number of people at this moment. Clearly, the fighting strength of this skeleton had caused them to be a little shocked. While everyone were exclaiming, a couple of rushing wind sound was suddenly emitted from the large hall that was covered by a blood fog. A couple of figures charged out from the blood fog with lightning-like speed. After which, they fiercely attacked old ghost Zhai Xing. Everyone glanced over and found that they were actually the human puppets that had yet to be completely finished off earlier. After the intense big battle earlier, those human puppets had killed quite a number of experts. However, there were a couple of them that had been shattered into dust by the combined attacks of many experts. However, there were still 6 of them that remained. The expression of old ghost Zhai Xing changed immediately when these 6 appeared together. He was already at a disadvantage. If these human puppets were to join the matter, he would end up dying in this place within less than 10 exchanges. Bastard, why are all of you still watching the show? Quickly attack. Old ghost Zhai Xing roared furiously. His body rushed backwards after he stomped on the ground with his foot. Valley Chief Tang Zhen, Valley Chief Bing He and this young friend Xiao Yang. The 4 of us will attack together and aid old ghost Zhai Xing in finishing of this Do Sheng skeleton. What do you say? That black-robed old man from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe was aware that they can no longer simply watch the show after hearing the furious cry of old ghost Zhai Xing. Immediately, his eyes turned towards Tang Zhen and Bing He. Their strength had reached the level of a 5-star and 4-star Dozuns respectively. However, the thing that surprised everyone was that he had actually called Xiao Yang, who was merely a 1-star Dozun, when he opened his mouth. Xiao Yang moved his finger. He glanced at the black-robed old man. This old fellow was clearly worried that he would end up having an overly easy time and possess a great amount of remaining strength. This was disadvantageous to them. Therefore, he wanted to pull Xiao Yang into the most dangerous battleground. Yes. Tang Zhen and Bing He Zunja nodded while Xiao Yang was in deep thought. Seeing this, Xiao Yang could only nod his head. He looked around him and said, "These 6 human puppets will be left to all of you experts. Mr. Xiao Yang, please be rest assured that these puppets will not disturb all of you." There were still quite a number of experts present. Although their legs would tremble when facing a Do Sheng skeleton, they could still deal with these 6 puppets by relying on their large numbers. "Be careful," Little Fairy Doctor whispered. "Yes, all of you should also pay more attention. If the situation is not right, you should all leave first. There is no need to bother about me. I will be fine." Xiao Yang nodded. His eyes exchanged looks with Tang Zhen and the others before the 4 of them rushed out at the same time. They became like large birds that hurried into the large hall. After which, they and old ghost Zhai Xing encircled around the Do Sheng skeleton. Xiao Yang's group had just begun to attack when the other experts within the large hall also got into action. Numerous figures once again rushed into the large hall. Powerful Do Chi surged and lured away those 6 puppets. After which, the large number of people surged forward like locust. In an instant, an intense battle erupted within the large hall. Old ghost Zhai Xing sighed in relief when he saw Feng Xian, Tang Zhen and the others coming to aid him. He spoke in a deep voice, "Everyone, let's attack together. Be careful of this fellow's swift speed." The few people nodded slightly when they heard old ghost Zhai Xing's reminder. Most of them were extremely experienced old individuals. Even though Xiao Yang appeared young, none of those old demons present dared to underestimate this young man, who had caused most of them to suffer some loss. "Let's attack together." The black-robed old man, Huang Xian, who elder from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe, cried out. His voice had just sounded when his arm trembled. A pair of wings were extended. His speed also suddenly increased at this moment. With a flash of his body, he became the first to appear above the head of the Do Sheng skeleton. He waved his large sleeve and a sharp palm wind covered the latter. After Huang Xian attacked, Tang Zhen, Bing He Zunja, old ghost Zhai Xing and Xiao Yang also rushed over one after another. Do Chi erupted from within their bodies. Their vast and mighty Do Chi was just like a monstrous wave that covered the Do Sheng skeleton. Incomparably sharp wind violently struck onto that skeleton and waves after waves of sparks erupted. The Do Sheng skeleton appeared to be in a flurry in the face of the attack from Xiao Yang's group. Currently, it was no longer that supreme Do Sheng. With the strength of Xiao Yang's group, it was not difficult for them to destroy him. The limbs of Xiao Yang's group violently landed on the Do Sheng skeleton as sparks flew. Each time they struck heavily on it, it would result in the blood color on the skeleton to pale a little. The blood glow within the skeleton's eyes also gradually became weak. The hearts of Xiao Yang's group were surprised when they saw that the attack had quite a good effect. They increased their attacking speed. At the same time, the eyes of old ghost Zhai Xing also flickered. A silver glow flashed under Xiao Yang's feet as he directly rushed into the area within half a foot from the Dosheng skeleton. Purple-brown flame lingered over his hand as it suddenly slammed violently on the rib cage of the skeleton. While bringing about some eye-piercing sparks, it also completely scattered the blood color on the rib cage. Xiao Yang withdrew after having succeeded in his first attack. His eyes suddenly paused on the bones that had turned jade white in color. He could vaguely see some unusual words on it. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over this kind of strange words. He was initially startled before a glint flashed across his eyes. A disbelief immediately surged up his heart. These words, could they be the Tian class Do technique? Xiao Yang's eyes focused on the jade white rib cage. His mind had churned violently because of that shocking thought. Those 10 scrolls are all used to confuse people. The true treasure is actually on this skeleton. No wonder that old ghost Zhai Xing insists on attacking. It is because he is aware that the treasure is hidden on this skeleton. A thought hurriedly lingered on Xiao Yang's heart at this moment. He finally understood why old ghost Zhai Xing would actually go all out and fight with this Dosheng skeleton despite his cautious character. What a cunning old ghost. Xiao Yang laughed coldly within his heart. The flickering glow in his eyes was swiftly withdrawn. The purple-brown flame on his hand hovered over it once again. His palm was subsequently thrown out in a lightning-like fashion. Each palm violently landed on the rib cage of the Dosheng skeleton. Under the frighteningly high temperature, the scarlet color that was present on the bones also swiftly disappeared. By sweeping his gaze over it for a moment, Xiao Yang discovered that not every bone had the kind of mysterious characters. It appeared that only a couple of ribs near the abdomen had this kind of character. There are 3 ribs that possess this kind of characters. An excitement that was difficult to discover danced within Xiao Yang's eyes. He was certain that the characters on these 3 ribs were definitely the real Tian class Do technique. Xiao Yang did not dare to stay still for long after gaining an understanding of the situation. He was afraid that others might see it. Immediately, silver glow flashed under his feet as he narrowly dodged the blade-like sharp fingers of the skeleton. Everyone, put in more effort. This skeleton is about to be unable to endure any longer. Old ghost Zhai Xing looked at the increasingly faint scarlet color on the skeleton's body. A great joy involuntarily flashed across his face as he cried out loud. The others acted as though they did not hear anything in the face of his words. This skeleton was extremely troublesome to deal with. Its ability to resist attacks could only be described as perverse. This seemingly weak skeleton was able to endure against so many attacks from the combination of the 5 of them without showing any signs of cracking. If it was not because of the increasingly faint scarlet color that indicated that their attacks still had some effect, it was likely that even they would lose their confidence. Bang! The vast and mighty Do Chi was just like a falling star as it tore through the sky and heavily exploded on the body of the Dosheng skeleton. A frightening strength shook the unusually hard and firm large hall until numerous arm-thick crack lines were formed. Under the wild and fierce attacks by Xiao Yang's 5-men group, the scarlet color on the Dosheng skeleton became increasingly faint. The red glow in its eyes was leaping in an increasingly intense manner. At this moment, his body had also suddenly stiffened. Old ghost Zhai Xing and the others were startled when they saw that the Dosheng skeleton had suddenly ceased moving. Immediately, they grabbed this opportunity. A storm-like attack continuously poured downwards. Xiao Yang's heart also became a little uneasy when he was unleashing his attack. An elite Dosheng was far too powerful. Even a trace of remnant spiritual imprint would likely not be finished off in such an easy manner. Quick, leave the hall. Xiao Yang suddenly turned his head and transmitted a voice in the direction where Little Fairy Doctor's group was at. The latter, who received this transmission, were startled. Before they could inquire anything, the entire group had already swiftly pulled back. Raw. Frightening attacks blasted apart on the surface of this Dosheng skeleton's body like fireworks. It paused for a moment before suddenly lifting its head. A somewhat vague low and deep hoarse voice appeared to be quietly emitted from the ancient times. Great. Heaven. Creation. Palm. A hoarse and ancient halting sound was transmitted into Xiao Yang's ear. It caused all the hair on his skin to suddenly stand up. A kind of extremely dangerous feeling spread apart from deep within the soul. Being driven by the horror of facing death, Xiao Yang had basically turned around almost instantly. Silver light flashed under his feet as he went all out to rush towards the distance. It is using a Do technique, withdraw quickly. While Xiao Yang had turned around and fled, Tang Zhen and the rest had also discovered something unusual. A shocked expression surged up their faces almost instantly, after which, they could not be bothered about anything as they hurriedly turned around and fled like mice. Bastards! The face of old ghost Zhai Xing turned green when he saw Tang Zhen and the rest fleeing almost instantly. He cursed furiously. While he cursed, however, his fleeing speed was also not the least bit slow. He had already fled over 100 meters with a flash. Xiao Yang's group, which had suddenly fled in a miserable manner, also stirred the attention of everyone in the large hall. Although they were unaware of what happened, they understood that it was definitely something really bad. Immediately, they clawed and rolled as they hurriedly pulled back. In an instant, the entire large hall had once again become extremely chaotic. During the time when the large hall was in a chaos, the scarlet color of the Do Sheng skeleton's body appeared to have become alive. It completely gathered on the skeleton's hand. In an instant, it had already dyed the right hand until it appeared to have been immersed in blood for countless number of years. It was so dark and deep that it caused one to feel a chill within one's heart. Roar. When the final trace of blood gathered onto the right palm, a soybean-sized black dot suddenly appeared at the palm of the Do Sheng skeleton. This black spot was really of an extreme pure black. If one was to glance at it, even one's soul would appear to be swallowed into it. It was extremely strange. The Do Sheng skeleton suddenly raised its hand when the black-colored small dot appeared. After which, it smashed heavily on the incomparably hard ground of the hall. The stone floor did not emit any sound when the bone palm landed. The moment it made contact, the incomparably hard stone floor instantly disappeared, revealing the deep brown color rock under it. The ground disappeared. A black light circle suddenly surfaced from the stone floor, after which, it suddenly spread. The black light scattered. Countless number of people immediately became extremely shocked. Regardless of whether it was the stone floor, the stone pillar or any other thing, any place where the black circle reached would disappear. It had truly disappeared. Not even a little of it remained. This kind of feeling was just like a black hole, appearing mysterious and frightening. Quick, run. The frightening scene caused everyone to feel their skin become numb. This was especially the case when they saw that the black light circle was still continuing to spread. Their hearts had all become tensed as their bodies hurriedly withdrew. They ran quickly, but the spreading of the black light was even quicker. The thing that was even more shocking was that the interior of the light circle had erupted into an extremely frightening suction force. Some of the experts that were caught off guard had directly been forcefully pulled until they flew out. They disappeared when they touched the black light circle and did not even leave any dregs behind. The sharp miserable cry sounded one after another within the large hall. In an instant, numerous human figures began to struggle wildly within the midair. However, they were unable to resist that suction force. Finally, they were absorbed into the black light circle and annihilated. Xiao Yang's heart became numb when he heard the continuously miserable scream appearing. This kind of Do technique was definitely of the Tian class. Xiao Yang's figure, which was rushing explosively, suddenly paused. His expression also suddenly changed. The suction force from behind was becoming increasingly frightening. It was already sufficient to affect his speed. Xiao Yang clenched his teeth tightly. His speed had been unleashed to its limit at this moment. Purple-brown flame lingered over his body. There were some repeated miserable screams continuously appearing in front of him as human figures flew out in an uncontrollable manner. The miserable screams from imminent death caused the hearts of everyone who heard them to feel a chill. The black light circle was just like a death god after one's life. It swiftly spread from the large hall. The entire large hall was also completely annihilated at this moment. The suction force is becoming increasingly strong. We must escape. Otherwise, we will definitely be sucked into it. Xiao Yang suddenly clenched his teeth as he sensed the increasingly strong suction force from behind. He actually forcefully turned his body around. Flame-splitting tsunami, open mountain seal, sea-flipping seal. Numerous unusually fierce attacks rushed out from Xiao Yang's hand. After which, it shot out violently. With the help of this thrust, Xiao Yang's figure also rushed backwards swiftly. However, these attacks that had shot out automatically disappeared when it spread to the black-colored light circle. The latter's spreading rate was not even halted for an instant. 3000 lightning illusory body, Xiao Yang's hand seal changed once again. A spiritual avatar directly appeared in front of him. After which, he violently swung his feet onto the shoulders of this avatar. Under the push force, Xiao Yang's body immediately emitted a swoosh sound as he finally shot out of this large hall and heavily landed on the square outside. That avatar crushed onto the black light circle under the opposite push force and was quickly destroyed. Screech. After Xiao Yang escaped and rose upwards, the black-robed old man a short distance behind him also suddenly let out a sharp cry. His entire body shook as he transformed into a 10 feet large heaven demon phoenix. Both of his wings were flapped and he finally escaped from that frightening suction force. After which, he rushed out in an extremely miserable manner and collided violently on the corridor outside. Tang Zhen, Bing He Zunjia, Old Ghost Jai Xing and the rest also staked their own lives and raised their speed to their limits when Huang Xian began to go all out. Finally, they charged out of the large hall at the last moment and miserably landed on a square. Everyone outside of the large hall were extremely frightened as they looked at the strange black light circle that spread within the hall. Fortunately, the latter had gradually halted when it had reached the edge of the square. Finally, it slowly disappeared in front of the gazes from the numerous survivors. After the black light circle disappeared, 1,000 feet large big deep hole appeared in front of everyone's gazes. At this moment, the spacious main hall did not even have the least bit of dross remaining. Xiao Yang swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead. He had really sensed death earlier. It was likely that even if old ghost Jai Xing and the others were to meet with the black light circle earlier, they would also definitely end up dying. Xiao Yang inhaled a couple of deep breaths. He suppressed the great storm within his heart as his eyes paused on the midair within the large hall. A jade-white skeleton was standing in the midair. The red glow within its eyes had completely disappeared at this moment. Clearly, the remnant spiritual imprint left behind by that elite Do Sheng had also completely disappeared at this moment. Tian class Do technique. Xiao Yang's eyes stared intently at the jade-white skeleton. A shocking heat suddenly erupted from his eyes. During the time that Xiao Yang's breathing had become heavier because of the Do Sheng skeleton, old ghost Jai Xing on the square also revealed a wild joy that could not be hidden on his face. The residue spiritual imprint that the elite Do Sheng had left behind also completely disappeared. Currently, this skeleton no longer possessed any offensive abilities. Although his heart understood that the bones currently did not possess any danger, old ghost Jai Xing did not immediately act despite being filled with anxiety due to the frightening palm from earlier. Are you alright? Xiao Yang stood up from the ground. Little fairy doctor's group hurried over and asked in a worried manner. Xiao Yang smiled and shook his head. He saw that those in front of him were not injured and his heart sighed in relief. Fortunately, you have warned us in time. Otherwise, the result will be unpredictable. That palm from the Do Sheng skeleton was really too frightening. It was likely that no one here could receive it. Tian Huazunja's eyes had some shocked expression. It was the first time that he had seen such a frightening Do technique. This should be the legendary Tian class Do technique. Moreover, this was the destructive force created by a residue soul that the elite Do Sheng had left behind. If it was to be unleashed by a genuine elite Do Sheng, it was likely that the large hall would not be the only thing that disappeared. Instead, it would be the entire remains or even half of the Bone Mountain range. Little fairy doctor spoke softly. Xiao Yang nodded. He had personally experienced the strength of this thing. If it was not because he had reacted quickly earlier, it was likely that he would be turned into a powder-like existence after having been absorbed into the black light circle. Quite a number of people here are unlucky. Zi Yang laughed quietly in a somewhat gloating manner. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the square and did indeed discovered that the originally large crowd currently only had a few people remaining. Moreover, most of these people, who had survived, had a horror that covered their faces. Cold sweat soaked their clothes. These people could really be considered to have been completely frightened. Unfortunately, those scrolls have also been destroyed. Qing Lin spoke in a somewhat regretful manner. The treasure in this place is not those scrolls. Instead, it is that Do Sheng skeleton. Xiao Yang smiled. His fiery hot eyes looked towards the jade-white skeleton that was suspended on the enormous deep pit. The skeleton not only hid the Tian class Do technique on it, but its body itself possessed a shocking amount of allure. Anything left behind by an elite Do Sheng were all top-tier treasure. Most of those who has survived until now are experts with some abilities. However, it is fortunate that they were all injured. From the looks of it, the strength of our side is the preserved most completely. Tian Huazunja spoke softly. Xiao Yang smiled slightly and softly said, there is no need to hurry. Someone will eventually act from impatience. Little fairy doctor's group was startled when they heard Xiao Yang's words. His gaze glanced towards the direction where old ghost Jai Xing was located. He could see that this old ghost current had a face with a wild joy that could not be hidden. This damn thing has killed so many experts from my Hall of Soul. Today, the old me shall act and turn this skeleton into dust. Old ghost Jai Xing suddenly stood up when the eyes of little fairy doctor's group glanced over. He cried out in a righteous manner. After which, his body moved, transforming into a blurry figure that rushed over towards the Do Sheng skeleton in the air above the deep hole. Do you really treat us as fools? We have scattered the residue soul within the Do Sheng skeleton after much hard work. Will we allow you to gain such a great reward? Huang Xian, Tang Zhan and Bing Hizunja let out a cold snort when old ghost Jai Xing's body moved. With their eyesight, they were naturally able to tell that this Do Sheng skeleton was extraordinary. How would they allow old ghost Jai Xing to obtain such a treasure for no reason? The three of them moved their bodies at the same time when their cry sounded. With a couple of flashes, they had caught up with old ghost Jai Xing. Each of them threw a palm towards the air. The frightening wind directly tore three dark black crack lines in the air. The fierce attack that rushed over from behind also caused old ghost Jai Xing's face to change. The strength of Feng Xian's group was similar to his. Currently, the three of them had attacked together. How could he forcefully receive it? His body twisted strangely and a couple of afterimages appeared in the midair and narrowly dodged the three wind. Their speed also ended up being reduced. Huang Xian and the two others rushed out after having blocked old ghost Zhaixing. After which, they flew over the latter's head. Their large hands directly grabbed onto the Dosheng skeleton in a violent manner. Bastards, you are seeking death. Old ghost Zhaixing's face was filled with fury when he saw this scene. The feelings from having joined hands earlier had already completely vanished. His hand grabbed across the space and a suction force erupted from it. It had actually directly styled the three figures in the midair for an instant. He also took the chance to flash his body. He took a step forward ahead of the others, grabbed with his large hand and caught an arm of the Dosheng skeleton in the process. Before he could pull with his strength, however, an incomparably sharp wind violently hacked towards his head from behind. Upon sensing this sharp wind from behind, the hand of old ghost Zhaixing, which was grabbing onto the Dosheng skeleton, was suddenly swung. He directly used his skeleton to block his back. It was forcefully being used to block the palm wind from Huang Xian trio. Bang! Powerful wind exploded on his bones. A strong force shook old ghost Zhaixing until he was being forced back. However, with the defense of the skeleton, he was not hurt. The wild joy on old ghost Zhaixing's face became increasingly dense as he grabbed the Dosheng skeleton. He did not say anything as he held the skeleton and fled. You wish to escape. A ghost-like figure appeared in front of old ghost Zhaixing just as he turned around. An enormous ruler that was accompanied by a fierce wind directly hacked viciously at him. Clang! The heavy ruler hacked onto the skeleton. Numerous sparks erupted. Xiao Yang's arm was also shaken until it became numb. Fortunately, that force also shook old ghost Zhaixing until he took a step back. At this moment, Huang Xian trio had once again caught up. They similarly remained silent. However, Doqi violently attacked the fatal spots all over old ghost Zhaixing's body in an extremely ruthless manner. Everyone on the square was stunned as they looked at the 5 people, who had suddenly ended up in a life and death battle because of a skeleton. With their eyesight, they were naturally able to tell that every strike from these people were ruthless. Clearly, they intended to kill the other party. It looks like that Dosheng skeleton is the treasure. Otherwise, it will not cause experts like old ghost Zhaixing to go all out to snatch it. Those who could still survive after experiencing the various danger were naturally not some ordinary character. They understood the reason with just the blink of an eye. Immediately, his eyes flickered. Some of the bolder individuals involuntarily stood up and showed signs of intending to intervene. I advise those whose strength has yet to reach that of a 3-star Dozun to forget about such thought. When these fellows were about to act, the experts from the Heaven Demon Phoenix tribe, Ice River Valley and the Burning Flame Valley stood in front of the large pit with icy cold expressions. Powerful aura spread swiftly. The faces of quite a number of people changed slightly upon seeing this. The combined strength of these few large fractions possessed quite a powerful strength. Even though they had some skills, they were unable to finish off all of these factions. Moreover, there were still a couple of genuine top expert in the midair. Even if they could charge over, it was likely that they would be unable to fight with them. These people could only shake their heads unwillingly when they thought of this in their heart. They abandoned the greedy thought within his heart. Natural treasures were things obtained by those with ability. They were only a source of trouble for those without any ability. Little Fairy Doctor's group sighed in relief when he saw that these fellows were deterred. They similarly did not wish for anyone else to intervene in the fight for the skeleton. Should that occur, it would only end up causing the situation to be even more chaotic. Old Ghost Zhaixing appeared quite miserable when he was surrounded and attacked by the 3 experts with similar strength. Old Ghost Zhaixing was also quite miserable. After enduring for over a dozen exchanges, he finally began to feel a little tired and chose to pull back. Although he wished to pull back, Huang Xian's group did not give him the chance to do so. After a fight, the 3 of them found an opportunity. Vast and mighty Do Qi directly struck violently on the shoulder of the Dosheng skeleton. 3 waves of vast and mighty Do Qi struck onto the same spot of the skeleton at the same time. The strength could split the mountain and burn the sea. Crack! The Dosheng skeleton was indeed extremely hard. However, it was also unable to endure this kind of all-out destruction. Immediately, a crack sound appeared. Old Ghost Zhaixing grabbed firmly on the Dosheng bones. Its left hand had actually directly been broken by Huang Feng and the 2 others. Bastard! The bone in Old Ghost Zhaixing's hand was flung off. His face was green as he grabbed onto the jade-white broken arm and roared furiously. His body flashed and flew towards the skeleton that had been flung off. However, his body had yet to reach it when a young figure appeared earlier than him. It grabbed the Dosheng skeleton with a broken left arm in his hands. Xiao Yang, you are seeking death. Old Ghost Zhaixing immediately became furious when he saw the skeleton being obtained by Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang ignored Old Ghost Zhaixing's roar. His gaze swept over the place, and other than Tang Zhen, both Huang Xian and Bing He Zunjia had also charged over with killing intent on their faces. Purple-brown flame hurriedly lingered within his palm. He grabbed the 3 ribs with strange hidden characters from the skeleton's stomach. After which, he pulled violently with all his strength. Crack! The Dosheng skeleton was extremely hard. Xiao Yang had used all of his strength in order to barely break the 3 somewhat weak ribs. A coolness spread over Xiao Yang's hands when the ribs landed in it. They appeared just like the best quality jade. His eyes swiftly glanced over, only to see unusual characters covering the ribs. An extremely faint luster flickered from these characters. At a glance, they appeared alive and were slowly wiggling. Xiao Yang did not observe them carefully at this moment. He kept them into his storage ring almost immediately. At the same time, his heart was also pounding intensely because of the excitement. Regardless of what happened, he had obtained this precious object. Since he had already obtained it, everyone could forget about getting him to spit it out today. The Tian class Do technique belonged to Xiao Yang. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.